Make his face shine upon you and be gracious and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his countenance, turn his face toward you and give you peace, and give you peace, and give you peace. יברכך יהוה וישמרך, יאר יהוה פניו אליך ויחונקה, יישא יהוה פניו אליך וישם לך, וישם לך שלום. וישם לך, וישם לך שלום, וישם לך שלום. יברכך יהוה וישמרך, יאר יהוה פניו אליך, יישא יהוה פניו אליך וישם לך, וישם לך שלום, וישם לך, וישם לך שלום, וישם לך Yahweh bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious, and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his countenance, turn his face toward you and give you peace, and give you peace, and give you peace.
Always got to remember to do that or to keep playing music in the background. Shalom and welcome everybody to today's class. There may be a couple more. Scroll in. I saw there was one or two having a hard time getting in. They might have a bad connection. Um, Today is the 12th, and there's one right there. You guys are going to be continuing with our vocabulary. Then we're going to watch a presentation from an acquaintance of mine who's passed away. His name's Rick Shaw. There's a lot of codes in that presentation that are very significant. A few that I've worked on, and some that I found that he's talking about in that presentation, which is relevant for today. Significant thing happened with one of those codes, which was about Nibiru, right? In my previous class a few years ago, there was a student who had found another code in the very same text. And when I started looking at the two, I realized that they were virtually on top of each other. And so it was actually two of us that found what I'm going to show you today. And I'm going to show you how I used that particular code to reconcile something, that happened at the crucifixion. So we're going to be taking a look at the Isaiah 53 code again today. We started that last week. We're going to look at that some more because there are details in there I didn't share with you for the sake of time last time. Then we're going to talk about, we're going to cross-reference the two, and I'm going to show you how you can use the codes to verify something. And in particular, and a strange anomaly happens at the crucifixion. Two eclipses happen in one 24-hour period. If you know anything about the sun, moon, and stars, it's impossible to have a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse within a 24-hour period. Those are usually spread out over a 2-week period. One happens at new moon and one happens at full moon. And by the way, there was a full moon at the Passover. It has always been that way. And, so the strange thing about that is on the day of the crucifixion, we see it in the text that the sun was blotted out for 3 hours, which that doesn't happen at an eclipse. We just had one. You saw it doesn't in any one of those places where an eclipse is seen. Never does it take more than just a few minutes. It's rather very quickly, but something else happened at the crucifixion that I think you will see the codes confirm. And so I'm going to tie all that and bring it all together toward the end of the class. Welcome, everybody. We may have one or two more come in. Good thing this is recorded. Let me go ahead and pray. You guys get your notebooks out. We're going to get some more vocabulary words. Then we're going to transition right into what Rick Shaw is going to show us. And then we're going to work some codes together. And then we may talk a little bit after class. You guys, I've been so busy, I have not been able to get what I got on this thumb drive to somewhere where you guys can download that. And so I'm going to have that as a priority, in the next day or so to get that done. So we'll have it for the next time because we got to go through the process of everybody getting a download, then working out all the kinks that may happen in that, like the resolution issue and a couple of other things that we might discover along the way while we're doing that. So for each one of you, there may be something that happens that we have to work through. So that's going to take a little bit of time to get through. And so we need some patience on that. We are just getting started, you guys, just getting started. So be patient. It's coming. We're all going to have the same programs and we're all going to be able to work the same codes as you see me working. Let me open up with prayer. Abba, Father, we're so thankful, Father, for this day and this opportunity to gather in your name and gather in your word. And we just ask that you dwell with us here today in your Ruach HaKodesh, that you would encamp your angels around us and keep us protected from the enemy. Father, that you would open your word to us in an amazing way. Father, open the hearts and the minds of each one here so that they understand and comfort us, Father, in this trying time that we're going through. Some of the things that are going on all around us, it might be a distraction, Father. We pray a special blessing over this group, and we ask this in Yeshua's name. Amen. All right, there's Sean. All right. Very first vocabulary word today. My friend Rick Shaw died a few years ago, and he was really, really close to Rabbi Gladerson. He was the video producer and kind of helped Glazerson and Marzulli with Watchers, that series, and the Bible Code series that you'd see Glazerson talking about on those DVDs. Rick Shaw is his name, owner of Penlight. Had many conversations with him. I met him several times at different conferences, and over the course of all those meetings, I probably sit down with him 4 hours talking about codes and Glazerson, and even talking with L.A. Marzulli about some of these codes that you're about to see. And this was during a time where I'd already come to Hawaii. After Trump was in office. He did this conference, and I want to say it was in Branson, Missouri. And he talked about a few codes in there that are pretty remarkable. Some that I've worked on, some that are concerning, like the Trump code. As I told you, I've told you to, I've worked on that code, and so did the rabbis. And matter of fact, that was the one that I had found and had determined that Trump would be elected during that first election. It was later that Rips found the anomaly next to it with the name of the assassin, that particular one. So again, a code where multiple people were working on and finding different things independent of one another in that very same code, as you're going to see with the Nibiru and the Isaiah 53 code here later, where the same kind of thing happened. And you will see that as well, where you guys may be working on something, not even in conversation about something. Maybe something that you saw, maybe something that the Holy Spirit put on your heart, and then you come to class and then you see somebody else working in the same thing. That's kind of amazing to me when we see that. And it tells me that the Holy Spirit is working to put these codes out there. So let's go to the Richard Shaw presentation. We're only going to watch a few minutes of it. But he fills in a lot of backstory on history and how the codes came about, Glazerson and how he met him and all that kind of stuff. But then he goes into all these different codes. So I thought it would be interesting to watch this from a couple of years ago. Looks like 4 years ago, Richard Shaw.
Do this, he goes, and then
we're actually starting at about 16 minutes in, because the first 16 minutes was really not really relative.
He floored me. He said, Professor Rips and Rabbi Glazerson interested in doing it, and I really wasn't interested in doing something with TBN all that much unless they would help fund us so we could actually do it. And so I called Robert and I said, hey, have you guys got any new codes or any new tables that are really cool that I could pitch to try to raise the money to do this? He goes, and then he floored me. He said, Professor Rips and Rabbi Glazerson will be in Los Angeles tomorrow. Here's their cell phone number. Now you have to understand.
A little backstory on what happened there is they were working on the Trump table, and Rips had found that anomaly I was just telling you about, and they felt it was so urgent that they flew to Los Angeles to meet with him on that.
And Professor Rips is the guy who is considered the originator of the Torah codes. It worked with Doran Whitston and Yoav Rosenberg back from 1976 through the 80s to develop the software to search the code, and then towards the end of the 80s, they enlisted Alexander Rotenberg, a graduate of Moscow University, to write the version that does the graphic representation we see today. That's how we got that. So Rips is like a mathematical genius, and was a
matter of fact, the code program that you guys are going to be getting from me, Dr. Rosenberg wrote that program. So this is all this history and stuff is significant because you're part of this now. And so these are things that might, be questions you have, how this come about and so forth, right? So directly from Rosenberg is, and by the way, that is the Leningrad Codex that we are looking at in that particular code program. What you will find with the different code programs is these different companies that put them all out would frequently use different text. You guys under there more than one Hebrew text, correct? So the one you're going to get from me, the TorahSoft and Code Finder is a completely different text and has other texts in there like the Greek and the Aramaic. So you'll have a span of different texts that we can look at, right? Because that's a question some people will have. Well, which text has codes? My answer, they all do, every single one of them. And in the differences that they have, it doesn't destroy the code, it creates new codes. And we'll talk about that too when we can show you that a little more visually of what I'm talking about.
Complete atheist, brought up an atheist, lived in, it wasn't Yugoslavia, but Czechoslovakia. He grew up there, tried to set himself on fire when the Russians invaded to protest. The horrified onlookers rushed up and put the fire out, and they sent him to a psychiatric prison for 2 years. And then another guy complained that Russia was putting people in jail for no good reason, so they threw that guy who complained into jail and released Rips. And Rips was picked up and sent to Jerusalem. Now, he had no idea what Jerusalem was like. All these guys with weird hats and dreadlocks and, stuff hanging down their pants and like long jackets. Like, what in the heck? He didn't know what it was. And that's the life of the rabbis there in various levels. And so he thought, well, I guess I better study this Torah book and see what this is all about. He'd never done it and everything. And he told me in the interview, which is in that little blue DVD that I have, that he discovered it was a book of miracles. Because it is. Think of all the things that happened in the Torah. We think of miracles as more like stuff that Yeshua did. But really, there was so much crazy stuff that happened in Exodus, in the Ark of the Covenant, the ephod that would light up when you ask questions to it, just on and on. Story of Joseph and reading people's dreams. I mean, it just goes on. It's just rich in detail with so much stuff. So he, as a scientist and brilliant mathematician, he had to prove that the Torah was real, and the only way he could do it was mathematically. So he delved into it and realized it was encoded. And his first clue to that was in 1976, there was a rabbi by the name of Yaniv, and I'll make this brief because I know this is late and I should have given everybody chocolate bars. But Yaniv turned him on to a guy named Weissmandel, who had found this skip letter thing. And so that's when Professor Rips got together with two other guys and developed some software. And that was kind of a tall order. Then there's another thing called gematria. And gematria is not the same. Gematria is like every Hebrew character has a number. It always has. And they add up. So, in this particular case, there's stuff that all of these sentences, it says the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob added up to 776. Kingdom of David and the world forever, 776. Come back to me and I will come back to you. They all added up to 776. What it meant, we don't know. We just thought it was really interesting. But I found that gematria isn't as... I don't know, I don't want to say it's unimportant because then I would make my rabbi friends feel bad, but I think it's cool, but it's not as involved as the Torah codes are. But here's gematria. And this needs some sound, guys.
Hey, Max, Lenny Meyer. Sorry, put it out.
This is from the movie Pi.
What do you do?
I work with computers, math,
Math? What kind of math?
number theory, research mostly.
No way, I work with numbers myself. I mean, not traditional. I work with the Torah. Amazing. Hebrew's all math. It's all numbers. You know that? Here, look. The ancient Jews used Hebrew as their numerical system, man. Each letter's a number. Like the Hebrew A, Aleph, it's 1. B, Bet, it's 2. You understand? But look at this. The numbers are interrelated. Like take the Hebrew word for father. Av, Aleph, Bet. 1, 2 equals 3. All right? Hebrew word for mother, Aim, Aleph, Mem. 1, 40 equals 41. Sum of 3 and 41, 44. All right? Now, Hebrew word for child. All right? Mother, father, child. Yelad. It's 10, 30, and 4. 44. Torah is just a long string of numbers. Some say that it's a code sent to us from God.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's just kid stuff. Check this out, okay? The word for the Garden of Eden, Kedem. Numerical translation, 144. Now the value of tree of knowledge, all right, in the garden, right? Eitz HaChaim, 233. 144, 233. Now you can take those numbers. So the
Like the Fibonacci sequence?
Fibonacci.
Fibonacci is an Italian mathematician in the 13th century. If you divide 144 into 233, the result approaches theta.
Theta?
Theta. The Greek symbol for golden ratio, golden spiral.
Wow. I never saw that before. That's like that series you find in nature? Like the face of a sunflower?
Wherever the spirals.
You see this math everywhere. Hey, Mac?
He couldn't take it. Even in the Torah. So Rips did a table finding the Fibonacci sequence. And all the numbers are there in a very small table, all stacked up neatly. And so this is the idea of equidistant letter sequencing, ELS. And if you look at this block of text, we've got pretty good projectors here, so you should be able to read it. But basically, the text says, this is the form we use for finding codes, and I added letters precisely placed to form a longer example. But the word order appears at the front of each sentence. So basically, when you search the Torah, you're getting like the computer to find a word, and it makes a long string, and basically makes a spiral of that whole thing, and then cuts it down the middle and unfolds it, and you're seeing it that way. That's how the computer's doing it. And this is the man who discovered it, was Rabbi Weissmandel in the 50s. And this is what he discovered. Basically, just using his finger to count, he found the word Torah in the book of Genesis every 50 characters. So then he thought, well, I'll try it in Exodus. Same thing happened in Exodus. This is counting with his fingers, no computers back then. So in the book of Leviticus, he thought, well, maybe it's in Leviticus, and he couldn't find it. So then he goes, okay, every 8 letters then. And he found Hashem, or basically the God with no name. And then in the book of Numbers, he found Torah backwards. And in the book of Deuteronomy, he couldn't find it in every 50 letters. He goes, oh,
I can't help it. I got to correct Rick here. You guys, when he said God with no name, he is an Elohim with a name. He's got several names, okay? In Leviticus, at every 8-letter interval, it does not have Hashem, it has Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Okay, so we just need to correct Rick on this little thing here. His name is there instead of Torah.
oh, but that's the book that Moses wrote, so he doesn't get the perfect number 50. So he'll get 49. And sure enough, the word Torah was in Deuteronomy backwards. So what do you have? You've got Torah, Torah, God, mirror image Torah, mirror image Torah. That's just counting with your finger. It's what's kept me interested in this all this time. People have also said, well, how are they forcing these letters to go sideways and up and down, vertical, horizontal, and diagonal? And they're not. It's just the way it comes out, and it has to do with resonance. Here's a physical example of that. This is a cadmy plate. It's basically a piece of steel that's attached to a subwoofer, and it's vibrated by a sweep oscillator. And they're just putting salts on it. So 345 hertz, you get that pattern. It's all natural. It's in nature. It's the way things work. The Torah codes work just the same way, except they're doing it in software. The size of the ELS means it's going to be horizontal, vertical, backwards, forwards, whatever. You can see how elaborate it gets at higher frequencies. So here are the world experts that I'm going to introduce to you. Professor Eliyahu Rips, who I've been talking about.
This is the man that set himself on fire in Czechoslovakia, right? This is the one that was an atheist. And when they put him out, and he went to prison for a while, but then they took him to Israel, and he became a believer. And it just so happens he's one of the top mathematicians in the world. This guy right here is into some really incredible math right here. He also had a hand in writing the program, writing the algorithm for the programs that we said. He worked with Rosenberg, and he was very, very acquainted with Weissmandel. These are the early fathers, the ones that brought us this. In other words, the software, not the Bible codes, not what's encoded, but the software, okay?
Just a sweet, humble, soft-spoken genius. I've been to his apartment in Jerusalem. I've spent a lot of time with him in New York when he was here a few years ago. And he writes me when he's worried about America. He loves America, and he worries about me. Thinks it's getting too violent here. Professor Robert Herolick, he's actually a professor of, his actual title is Distinguished Professor of Computer Science at City University in New York. What he's currently doing, last time I talked to him about a month ago, I actually had Gladison in the car with me. He came to visit me in Los Angeles, so I said, let's call up Robert and see what he's doing. So I can usually never get him on the phone because he's so busy teaching. I said, so what is it you're doing? He said, I'm working with DNA. And I said, oh, we've done quite a bit of that ourselves. What are you doing? And he said, until about 10 years ago, they only thought that there were 20 amino acids in DNA. And I said, okay. He said, well, we found there's actually 22, the same number of amino acids as our characters in the Hebrew language. And he said, now we think we can have a different way to find Torah codes using DNA and actually find in-depth information about anybody. I said, That's crazy. And of course, a lot of my Jewish friends believe in reincarnation. When they read the passage of Nicodemus, you know, what do I have to do? You must be born again. They go, oh, well, that means that he's being reincarnated. They all think that. I mean, that's just the way they believe. And I'm going, well, not necessarily, but I mean, that's what they think. So Professor Hercolubus believes that the DNA would even show everybody's past lives. I mean, that's how deep into it he is. This is what always intrigues me about the whole orthodoxy. And this is Rabbi Matityahu Glazerson. He's done, I don't know, 3,000 tables maybe by now. He writes me every day, sends me new tables all the time. We work together quite often. He's like part of the family. He'll come over to my house and raid my refrigerator. And I really mean it when I say, and I've told other people this, but I really mean it because, I'd be like in the stairway where he can't see me and I'm tearing up. I told, Lord, it's almost like I've got Elijah walking through my house. It's just so cool, And, we have this really weird relationship. He knows I'm a Christian and he's a, Orthodox Jew, block kosher, everything has to be just so. I've actually cooked for him at home, and he'll ask me, what do Christians think about this? And I'll say, what do you think about that? And we have these really deep discussions about stuff I couldn't have with anybody else. I mean, because he knows all about the Torah, plus he knows all about the ancient Jewish mystical texts, which I don't look at as being scripture, but I do believe that these are God's chosen people, right? We all believe that. So God has imparted certain information on that maybe the rest of us don't quite get. So I want to know what he knows. I'm really intrigued with it. And it's not like I'm going Orthodox or anything like that. I just want to have a better understanding of these guys so I can better relate to them. And if I'm sharing Christ with them, I don't do it in a way that it offends them. That we can stay, But at this point, he's like part of the family. This is Professor Alexander Rotenberg. He's a graduate of Moscow University. He's just incredibly brilliant. He was the guy that invented the Torah code crossword puzzle of Look that we're talking about. He was the guy that did the graphic representation of the codes that we use today. This is Art Levitt. Art Levitt is just really super straight-laced about the codes. If you haven't done them a priori, and if you don't know the p-value for them, then they don't mean anything. They're like ordinary, he said. So he works really close with Rips, and Rips and him get along really great. So I really respect Art's stuff. And but they all have their own way of looking at the Torah and pulling things out of it. Glazerson has this really deep understanding of ancient Hebrew. Art Levitt looks at it kind of mathematically like Professor Rips does. Rotenberg's totally different because he's at like the coding level himself. I mean, all these guys are incredibly brilliant, talented, and I love hanging out with them. So here we go. It's one of my favorite tables. It's beyond coincidence to me. So you have this whole line of text. It says, what is their heart, United States, the abomination unto the Lord, and 90-degree angle at the same angle as this, Obama and Hillary. And then right here, the left. And then right here, crossing it, they are defiled. But the weird thing is, all this came up under the plain text, an abomination unto the Lord, Deuteronomy 17:1. And they didn't, Glazerson didn't force this table to end up on the plain text that actually said that. It just happened that way. So, and then at the very bottom it says, cursed will be the taker of bribery. And that's also in the plain text. The next is one by Art Levitt. His are real simple, clean, and direct, and couldn't have been put there by random chance. Saddam will die, hanged, like his brother. All in a tiny little table with just maybe, 150 characters. So it's not like stuff scattered all over the page like you see on YouTube, that kind of deal. It's just a tiny little, very precise table. Here's another one. You guys know who George Norrie is at Coast to Coast AM?
All right, so
Well,
this is
George
really
had me on
interesting
his-
right here, you guys, because this would be like a typical personal code done, right? On any individual. When you have notoriety, like for instance, the code searcher. I don't know of anybody else in the world called the code searcher. So when you can find that encoded in the text, who is that talking about? So George Norrie, broadcaster, and all the information there is talking about a specific person. Okay. Now there can be times if you look for, like Jonathan Wright is a very generic name. You know, just in the town here, I know when I went and got my bank account, they told me there were 5 other Jonathan Wrights with different middle names, right? So they asked me which one I was, you know, which one are you, right? So sometimes a name will have many people, right, have that name. So that's when we need the little details to isolate the individual. I personally believe with names like that, you could have multiple people encoded with the same name in the same table. But for this example, is about George Newry, a very famous person. I think he's passed away by now, but this is his table. Listen to what he says about it.
Talk about the Torah codes when we first released the film, and this guy calls in from someplace in Canada at 10 till 2 a.m. in the morning to ask, is the Torah codes the book of life? I said, that's a really good question, and Glazers and I have discussed that. And wouldn't it be ironic if we've all been carrying the book of life around with us, going do, and you know, are our names in there or not? And so the reason I began wondering if that could be the case is because I asked Glazers, can you find everybody's name in the Torah? No, we can't. I said, you can't? So that made me really suspicious, like not everybody's name was in the Torah codes. So then when I said that on the air, George goes, I got...
All right, let me just clarify something. The rabbis are only looking in the Torah. So when he says you can't find everybody's name, he's talking about the Torah. We searched the whole Bible, and I've done 400 and almost 60 something names so far, and I've been able to find every single one of them. Okay, so that's a little bit misleading right there. That everybody's name is not there. I believe everybody is there, and we just have to search the whole text.
I don't know if I'm in it. I said, okay, well, we got to take this offline because you're going to have to give me some personal information. He said, okay, I'll call you tomorrow. So George calls me at home and gave me all this info, and I gave it to the rabbis. I said, look, there's 3 million people listening to this show. We got to do a table for George Newry. And I don't ask this lightly because I know it's a lot of work. So it took him 3 weeks.
You guys hear what he said? It took 3 weeks to work that one code, one personal code for the rabbis.
They did 9 tables for me. But this particular one was done by Professor Rips, and it's typically his style. It's a complete sentence. I'm not trying to ignore you guys over there. I can only point at one screen at a time. But basically, they understand that George likes the paranormal, okay? So the whole string right down the middle, the key words for this table say, loves the paranormal, but clear cut. So he's not like crazy. He believes that paranormal's real, and he loves dealing with it. That's George, okay? And then Art worked on it too, and found broadcaster right there, radio, crossing the whole deal, and then Nori right next to it. And it was incredible. I printed these out on really big pages and sent them to George so he'd have them. Here's one that Matityahu Glazerson keeps looking up my name in Pinlight in the tables. He keeps finding stuff. I don't ask him always to do this, but then when we released the film in 5775, he found the keywords, the code will be distributed. And then right under it is my name. And he goes, well, that's really significant because your whole name came up. And then off to the right, it says, son of Jesse. And then over here, doctrine of Messiah, Glazer, son, Matityahu, his name is in there. And then the cool thing is at the bottom where it says, your eyes which see the deeds of God. Then this is one he just did for me. And this is the keywords were Torah code, the code of Messiah, Pinlight, my company name, Ephod, which always comes up in Torah code tables sometimes. And it says 5736. 5736 was the year that Rabbi Yaniv gave the information to Professor Rips that caused him to start looking into the Torah codes. 5736 is 1976. And 5775 is when we first released the film. The deeds of God will show to the world. Then this is one that we have actually in the film. It's the Twin Tower Table Massacre, Twins, Towers, Ishmael Massacre, September 11th, the terror attack. Over the plain text that says, and fell from the people this day about 3,000 men. I mean, there's the whole deal right there. And that's in the plain text, non-encoded. Then this is one on Brett Kavanaugh, which is really, really, when I first thought of that, well, okay, it's a little messy, but then I started really getting into it, which sometimes these take some thought to truly understand them. So you see in a row, it says feminine plot. And then right above that, hatred, and Brett's name there, and the other side, the keyword was Kavanaugh, and against, and then the date 2018, left, and Amalek is always the evil thing, and then the word Samael. Now that was, in Jewish parlance, Samael is an evil angel, the opposite of good. But what's really interesting is the desolation of God, or the left hand, which is so, when I read that, I'm going, wow. I mean, that's like hidden information that, it's the left that was after Kavanaugh. Here's one that we found, because I asked them about it. On the 1st of March, Breitbart was poisoned, will be killed, in the plain text, will be killed in 5772, which is 2012. I mean, that's a really clean table. I mean, there it is. Here's one that I thought was, because we were looking up 2012 tables, we thought maybe that something would happen in 2012. But Glazerson nailed it with this table. Change in the world. On the 10th of Tevet, which is the Jewish calendar for December 22nd. If you remember the Mayan calendar and all of that, the change in the world was supposed to happen on December 21st, right? So this is the day after that in the Hebrew calendar year of 5773, because the dates overlap. We haven't had a new year yet. They had their new year already. So for them, it's 5773. For us, it was 2012 still. And this comes out, change in the world, the day after the Mayan calendar was supposed to explode, or whatever it was supposed to do. And if you think back, a lot of things have happened since then. I mean, the whole world has gone, everything has been crazy since that time. So this is probably one of the most famous tables, is the Twin Powers one that Professor Rips found. And there's a little piece of video here that I did a long time ago, but it's so cool that you have to see it again.
Many pages are just empty. But when we came to chapter 20 of this book, then all of them suddenly appeared in one place. This shows very clearly how everything concentrated in one single place.
So what he's saying there, he had tractor feed paper. He printed out the entire book of Numbers from the Torah, all of it, and just rolled it out there. And all of the codes for the Twin Towers attack ended up in this little tiny space in chapter 20, the book of Numbers. There they all are right there. The chances of that are 1 in 10 million. Here's the same table, and comparing it with a random monkey text. A monkey text is just a randomized text that has the same number of characters. That random text.
I want you guys to look at a difference here between the proximity, the clustering of terms, and then what he has over here, how loose this is. This is a massive matrix that he's looking at, which has thousands of letters, and you see these terms are very loosely scattered. Okay, this would be what he considered monkey text or randomness. We do have to encounter randomness sometimes. I believe these codes are hidden in a sea of randomness. You heard earlier where he was talking about resonance and how frequency, when you change the frequency, things resonate out. We also see that with the codes. You'll see sometimes that you'll be searching for an ELS term, and you'll see a resonant effect where it shows up multiple times, right? We don't care about the very large numbers, okay? We want to see the very small numbers in clustered areas. That's when it becomes something that's an anomaly, okay? So that's really important to point out here. And this is why Rips and one of the other guys there, they are what's called purist. And so unless they see these things in very small tables, they discount all the other stuff. And I'm more of a moderate in the middle. I believe that there's a middle ground because I do think larger tables, some of them are relative, right? But not all of them, not all the extreme ones where the terms are scattered so far out. They don't share letters, they don't cross one another, they don't have any interaction. You don't see any symmetry and things like that, right? Okay.
4,488 letters to achieve the same results, whereas Rips's table has 234 letters. Here's another table they did. Herolic did this for me as a comparison.
Look how massive that is. This is not going to be an acceptable code right here. If you search, and here's the thing, you can bend the rules so much so that you can find anything that you want to find, and you can convince yourself that it's significant, right? And you may even go as far as make predictions on that, but I got to tell you, there have been 100 people to do that already, and in many cases, they fall right on their face. Michael Drazen was like this in his book. The only predictive code that he ever had was the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. All the other ones were very loose anomalies in there, or results. I won't call it an anomaly, but results, okay? To go and give a narrative on what it means, especially if you're predicting something, can be dangerous. You don't want to do that. You will kill your credibility, all right? So you always want to err on the side of, being smart and safe on doing things like that, right? First of all, you want to have some tenure. You want to be able to do this so long that you can look in hindsight. Let's say you work a code and it turned out to be maybe prophetic, or it turned out to be something that was spot on. It ended up happening. Learn from that and learn the pattern of what you're seeing before, as far as, things you work in the future. You start learning what is significant, what's not significant, things that are just kind of stand out and pop and just kind of scream at you. And then things are just like, okay, right? There's a difference, right? So I want you guys to be able to determine that when you're searching codes.
Random text, 7,772 letters it took to achieve those words, and they're all scattered all over the page. So, if you say it's in Moby Dick or if it's in War and Peace, it doesn't work that way. Now, this is getting into Planet X. I mean, a lot of people, either you love the idea or you hate it, or you think maybe something's to it or not, but the Jewish rabbis are totally into it.
Which I didn't understand at first. You guys, if you go to Glazerson's channel and you put in, in the search box, Nibiru or Planet X, it will pull up dozens of videos that he's done over the years, going way back, way back, about Nibiru. First time I'd heard this word was with the Stitchins stuff and Anunnaki and all this kind of stuff. So I started searching the word and was just kind of amazed at the number of times it appears. This particular code that you're looking at, I was already working this, and I happened to be watching Glazerson do a presentation on his channel, and he's working the same code. It wouldn't have, so here's why. When you're searching out an access term, you always want to go for the smallest ones first, right? And this is a really small one, as I'm going to show you in a moment. He's got it at a skip of 40, but it's actually at a skip of 39. And when it's on a skip of 39, it's straight up and down. And it's in one place. It's in Numbers 24. If you know anything about Numbers 24, it's a prophecy from Balaam about the future and about the Mashiach and the end of days and what will happen there. And it just so happens in this prophecy that we're going to read in just a minute, the long version of the word Nibiru appears. Not hard to find. If anybody had been searching this sequence of letters, you would have found it. And indeed, that's happened. I found it. Glazerson was working on it at the same exact time, you guys. I kid you not. And I happened to see him, and then later see Rick Shaw talking about this in his presentations. And so I'm thinking, okay, so what is going on with this Nibiru? Because first of all, with the stitching thing, I didn't understand it. And at first I thought, when the world sees Wormwood taking place, those that don't have an idea of what Wormwood is, because they never read Revelation, they're going to call it something, right? Planet X, Nibiru, even if they got it from stitching. So my thought was, okay, maybe this is why we see this word all over the place and in significant places. I'm talking like when the sun stood still with Joshua, right? Joshua's long day. Nibiru is in the middle of that. I mean, just as amazing as this one is. The Isaiah 53 table has Nibiru in it because something blocked out the sun for 3 hours, you guys. It was not the moon. The moon was in the wrong place, so something else was there, right? So I see him working on this, and I start going, wait a minute, man. Could Planet X, Wormwood, Nibiru, or any other word be the same thing? And so I started going down this rabbit trail of checking this out. He said something here really interesting that I did not know previously, which is there's a prophecy in the Zohar that a rabbi gave about a star system, and he probably based it off of Numbers 24, would appear in the sky as a sign when the Mashiach arrives, okay? So keep that in mind when we finish, and we're going to move right on from this, not too much longer. We're going to work some codes on this very subject right here. And I'm going to show you the process of how I was able to determine, oh my gosh, there's something cyclical happening every so many years, and it's not necessarily the same cycle every time. But there seems to be something going on with the scriptures where you see Joshua's long day, Hezekiah's 10 degrees, what happened at the cross, what took place during Noah's time when there was a deluge, and then historical things that we can see that's happened throughout time, scarring of the earth, those kinds of things. Something significant has happened to our planet many times, and I think it's connected to this thing called Nibiru, Wormwood, Planet X.
Which surprised me, because I was listening to a lecture yesterday about Tower of Babel here, and it reminded me of one of my early conversations with Glazerson. And I'm rushing because I don't have much time, but if I go over 5 minutes, there's no one after me, if you aren't falling asleep by then. But we got a late start. But when Glazerson was over at my studio, somehow we got to talking about Noah and the flood and the Tower of Babel. And I'm dying to ask him what he thought of UFOs and all that, and if they were in the codes, but I didn't know him well enough in those days. And then he goes, oh, yes, the Tower of Babel was a launching platform for space vehicles. And I said, what? And this is a guy that looks like Elijah sitting in my office telling me this. So we know about Nimrod, we know about all that. We know in the book of Jasher, it says that he wore, and I talked about that, I mentioned this to Gary Sturman the other day. He said he wrote a 7,000-page article about this idea of Nimrod wearing Adam's clothes that God made, and it empowered him. Did you guys know that? I thought that was really intriguing when I read that for the first time. So Glazerson totally believed that the Tower of Babel was something more than just to go up to heaven. It was really going to heaven. And spaceships were landing and stuff like that. It was like a normal deal. So Planet X is a great table in the end of days, and then in the plain text, in yellow, it says...
All right, this is the exact same table that he showed. He was showing you on a skip of 40, which makes we can change the spiral, and I'll show you that in just a moment, on Torosol, where it'll turn on an angle, right? Now he's showing you at the exact skip of 39, which is how I found it, and that's what it looks like.
Says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. An interesting thing is, in the Zohar, which is a Jewish mystical text, it says, after 40 days, when the pillar rises from earth to heaven in the eyes of the whole world, and the Messiah has appeared, a star will rise up on the east, blazing in all colors, and 7 other stars will surround that star, and they will wage war on it. So there was a guy, basically all this text below is talking about, there was a man who claimed he was the Messiah years ago. And the Jews didn't believe him because they didn't have the planet in the sky that's predicted in the Zohar. So without that, they knew the guy was a fake. I mean, that's pretty interesting. What does Jesus say? Immediately after the tribulation of those days, so the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and all the tribes of the earth shall mourn. So before Jesus comes back, there's a sign that appears in heaven, and it's logical that there's some kind of interplanetary event that happens that just wakes everybody up. Of course, in Isaiah 13 and in Isaiah 24 and in...
Could this be when it says that men's hearts failed them for the fear of those things coming upon the earth, right? You see how I got down this rabbit trail of looking at this, and now also what's in Revelation 8 and several other places where it seems like there's a cataclysmic event that happens right at the end, right? So it's all the puzzle pieces kind of start fitting together.
In Malachi 4, there's all of these things that say, and the earth will be turned upside down, and there won't be a branch or a root left to any of them. The world will be, God will completely clean off the face of the earth. I mean, it's like there's major things happening, and he couldn't fix the earth this time by putting water on it, because it would be uninhabitable because of radiation. We got hundreds of nuclear power plants that would all flood, and it would just be unrecoverable. So he's doing it with fire this time. Then this is from my friend Gil Broussard, who believes that Planet X has come through the system more than once. And if you look at his research here, like, Venus, 2,500% increase in brightness. Jupiter, 200% increase in brightness. Uranus, big change in brightness, increased global cloud activity. Pluto, 300% increase in atmospheric pressure. The moon is growing in atmosphere. This is, it's just like all this stuff's happening, and all of the government's telling us about global warming, but they don't tell you that it's happening throughout the solar system. It's not us doing it. There's something affecting all the planets in our solar system currently. And if you go out and look at Venus, you go, wow, it's really bright. Have you noticed that? It's really bright.
Wow,
so the mainstream media is now into Planet X. This shocked me. Gil sent me this clip, and I thought, you got to see it. This is like a talent show, okay? So she's about to introduce this group from the Dominican Republic, and the kid is awesome that's performing in this, but you're not going to believe what happens at the end. I was just like, you got to be joking.
Just like this dance crew from the Dominican Republic is doing. It's Da Republic.
So basically what he's saying there is that Hollywood and the media is telegraphing some kind of event. I mean, we see this in the movies that's been coming out in the past, 20, 30 years with Armageddon and Deep Impact and, what's the one about the moon getting too close or something? All these interplanetary, things happening that puts the Earth in distress, right? So it is a real thing.
I just thought that was incredible. In Michael Drosnin's book, released in 1997, on page 155, it says, "Comet, it will be crumbled, I will tear to pieces, 2012.
Now, this is really interesting, and I actually forgot about this code. This could be considered a predictive code here, because he did find this before Comet Elenin. If you guys remember Elenin when it came by, and there was even talk about it might have a close approach and even impacting the Earth and yada, 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 and people were freaking out about it. And but then it went around the sun, and it was torn to pieces. It looked like it looked like a string of pearls, right? Which is not uncommon. Actually happens a lot. We even had one that did that, went around the sun and then impacted Jupiter. Schumacher-Levy 9 did that. So it's not a strange thing to happen. It does happen. There's even comets that dive into the sun. So he found this before,
Well, he wrote this many years before 2012. No one knew there was going to be a comet in the sky in 2012. I sent it to Glazerson. I said, can you check this out and see if this table's accurate? Because Drosnin taught him.
So even in 2012, you can see Glazerson's looking for Nibiru, right? Imagine I'm following him, and I'm like, okay, what's the significance of Nibiru, right? What is this thing? And so I started looking around and finding stitchings and stuff, and I'm going, man, this doesn't make any sense. Then it occurred to me that this has got to be what non-Christians are going to call what happens in Revelation 8, Isaiah 24, and several other places of the Bible, this is what they're going to call it.
Hebrew, and I trust Glazerson more. So Glazerson also showed it to Rotenberg. So up at the top it says Elenin. Remember, it was common Elenin, will break, broken, Nibiru, to be finished in 5772. And down at the bottom, really ominously, it says in the plain text, in the end of days. So then this came out in space.com, October 2011, because remember, our calendar is off from theirs. Doomsday comet, Elenin zips by Earth in pieces. And that comet was it was supposed to come in front of the Earth with an ejecta so big that it would block out the sun for 3 days. Everybody was saying that. Well, that's going to be interesting when that happens. It was like a freight train, and we were like going like that. It wasn't going to hit us, but we would be affected by its tail. And it was broke to pieces, just like Drosnin's table said in 1997. We didn't know there was a comet in 2012.
So there you can see that sometimes in hindsight, these codes will make sense and actually sometimes even be predictive. I actually forgot about that one. I thought his only predictive code was the assassination, but again, that goes to show, sometimes these things are timeless. He found that in 1997. The comet didn't happen until 2012, and it did in fact happen. So this is how one can get on these rabbit trails, you guys. So I want to transition over now to the code program and look at a couple of things with you. In particular, the Nibiru code that I had worked on, and then I saw Glazerson working on. And then I had a student come into class, and she was like, hey, I got to show you this really cool code that I found, which she had looked up the word codes of Yeshua, right? Bible codes. Codes of Yeshua she found at a skip of 9 in the very same text as this particular Nibiru code that I'm going to show you. And, I'm looking at both of them, and I'm going, wait a minute, this is because I'm looking at mine, and I'm looking at hers, and I'm looking at mine again, and then hers, and I realize it's the same text. It's the very same text. So all this information was found by 2 different people with more than that working on the very same code. And here it is. This is Nibiru at a skip of 39. It's the full spelling. And as we can see in here, it has the end of days crossing it, just like in Glazerson's table. It's the same table, right? We also have what my student found, which is down here. All of these letters are at a skip of 9. And it's vertical anomalies. In a moment, I'm going to show you how we can change the cylinder width of this particular, because this is a cylinder, you guys, that we're looking at. Every time you look at a code, whether it's a small code or a big code, it's on a cylinder. The spiral going around that cylinder, and we're looking at a window of it. Okay, does everybody follow? So I realized, oh my gosh, this is the same text. What is the meaning of this? What is Yah trying to tell us? Okay. So let me just show you that real quick, how on code TorahSoft, we can change the cylinder width. If I go to this little icon right up here, right next to the search one with the little binoculars, this is where you do your search. Right here is where we change the cylinder width, the max width, right? We're going to change it to 9 real quick, just so you can see what I was discovering with my students' table. This is what her table looked like. This is all the letters you see under the Nibiru code at a skip of 9. So in my table, they're separated at the bottom going across the page. When you make the cylinder smaller, they now form vertical anomalies. Like this one, code of Yeshua. Actually, it has an extension on it. Let me just back that up. Otiot was found under code of Yeshua. So now we have a long anomaly. Otiot and codes of Yeshua. What does that mean? You guys remember this word, Otiot? have I given you that as a, I can't remember if I gave you that yet as a, oh, you're in for a treat. So this is one of your, vocabulary words here in the future. I thought I already gave it to you, which is otiot. The root word of this is ot, which means sign or signal, but it also can mean letters. So you have letters and codes of Yahuwah. That's vertical right here. Right next to it is the word Ibrit, which means Hebrews. It's plural. This is for the Hebrews, you guys, those that have crossed over. And then going in the other direction is another vertical anomaly, which is Yom Bo. And then for some reason, I should have highlighted that a different color because that is, so it says Yombo, the day comes. Then it has Resh in there, which means head, my name. Doesn't seem to make any sense, but it's a vertical anomaly that's right there. It has something to do with his name. In the day that I wouldn't even know how to put that in a sentence. In the day of my name. And the only thing I could think about is when I saw that is what it is over on the other one. So we move back to 39. It's the same table with the end of days. We've got a harbinger in here in the orange, but we also, the crucifixion is in here. So there's a connection with this planetary body that the Jews are calling Nibiru. Let's take a look at the text, you guys, because this is where, you start seeing the connection to the actual text. All right, so let me just grab a place to bring up the Hebrew and the English so we can see this together. All right, give me a second. I got to save it and open it back up. Little glitches like that are, especially when you're trying to do a presentation, is kind of annoying. Just give me one moment. Got to open it back up. You'll find the same thing happen to you sometimes, you guys. You'll be working on something and there'll be a glitch and you got to save your information, save your table, and then reopen it up. Think about these old softwares. So let me bring you back the screenshot. We'll try again. All right, so let's say you're just opening your code program and you want to work on one of your codes, something you've already filed. That's going to be right here in this little icon, this little folder, open workspace. These are all the codes that I have on this particular computer is here. And I want to see my Nibiru code. It'll open it for me, right? And then you can highlight a letter or just pick a place when you want to look at the text. And I'm going above where the body of the access term is because I want to read through that so we can see what's actually taking place there. Okay. All right. So what I've got highlighted there, this olive, is this olive right here. And you can see we're in chapter 24 of Numbers. Let's just read it from the beginning so you can get a context of what's going on. This is Balak and Balaam. Okay, Balak is trying to get Balaam to curse Israel, and he's not going for it. And Here's what it says. And when Balaam saw that it pleased Yah to bless Israel, he went not, right? He wasn't going to curse Israel, but bless. He went not, as at other times, to seek for enchantments, but he set his face toward the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Israel abiding in its tents according to their tribes, and the spirit of Elohim came upon him. And he took up this parable, and he said, Balaam, son of Beor, had said, and the man whose eyes are open had said, now he's seeing into the future. He had said, which heard the words of Elohim, and which saw the vision of the Almighty. So he is seeing he's not asleep. He's gone into a trance, and the Spirit has come on him, and he's going to see something in the future, right? Which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. How goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, and thy tabernacles, O Israel. As the valleys are spread forth, and the gardens by the river's side, as the trees of lime aloes, which Yah had planted, and as a cedar tree beside the waters, he shall pour the water out of his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. And his king shall be lighter than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. We're talking about a king. You understand? This is where it has a connection to the crucifixion. Elohim brought him forth out of Egypt. Right? That happened with the children, but also with Yeshua. Remember, Yeshua went to Egypt. And he had, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. Let me stop right here, because I know some of you are going to see that in the King James. Are going to be like, oh, unicorns. Let me just explain to you what a unicorn is in ancient times. They didn't have a name for a rhinoceros. If you go and look at this word, the etymology for this word in the Hebrew, and you put it into a dictionary, it will bring up a rhinoceros. You know, with the horn. So it has the one big horn. That is what a unicorn is when you see it in the Bible. Completely off topic. I just have to point that out because you're all reading it along with me. It had the strength of a rhinoceros, right? He shall eat up the nation, his enemies, and he shall break forth their bones and pierce them through with his arrows. And he couched and laid down as a lion, as a great lion, who shall stir him up. Blessed is he that blessed thee, and cursed is he that curseth thee. And Balak's anger was kindled against Balaam, and he smote his hands together. And Balak said unto Balaam, I call thee to curse mine enemies, and behold, thou hast altogether blessed them these 3 times. And now, therefore, now flee thou unto thy place. I thought to promote thee unto great honor, but lo, the Adonai hath kept thee back from honor. And Balaam said to Balak, speak I not also to thy messengers, which thou sendest to me, saying, if Balak would give me of his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the commandment of Yah to do either good or bad of my own mind. But what the Adonai had said, I will speak. And here's where he goes into the prophecy right here. And now, behold, I go unto my people. Come therefore, and I will advertise to thee what this people shall do to thy people in the latter days. Now, if you understand who Balak is and what is going on with Israel right now, Amalek, what happened in August, the fact that there's a proxy war going on in Israel, Psalm 83, potentially Ezekiel 38, 39 with Gog and Magog, the surrounding of Israel. If you look at on the world stage of what's going on, he is talking about that particular time. He says, let me tell you what this people shall do to thy people in the end of days, in the latter days. And Nibiru is running right through that. Right through that. That's where we see that. End of days, verse 14. And he took up this parable and said to Balaam, son of Beor, he had said, the man whose eyes are open had said, he had said, which heard the words of Elohim and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw he the vision of the Almighty in the future. falling into a trance and having his eyes open. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and smite the corners of Moab. Let me just stop right there. When he says, a star shall come out of Jacob, is he talking about a physical star coming from the man Jacob? Let me tell you what I think he's talking about here. I think he's talking about the Maseroth. If you go back to the dream with Joseph, and Joseph has a dream, and who are the people or what are they represented by in the dream? The father and the mother, the sun and the moon, right? All the brothers are the constellations in the Maseroth. If a star is coming from Jacob, who is the sun, and I'm talking about the Helios sun, not the Son of God, but the sun. If a star is coming, listen to what I'm saying with the Planet X stuff and all the Nibiru stuff. Over the years, where do they always point the camera? Toward the sun. And they always see something by the sun, right? It says a star, Kakav. We're not talking about like a galaxy or a gas giant, but a planet. A Kakav in Hebrew means planet. It moves, right? It doesn't mean literal star like the sun, okay? It can, but in this sense, when we're seeing it move, it's not a gas giant. It's not like that. It's got to be a planetary body, okay? A star coming from Jacob. It's coming from the direction of the sun, but maybe from behind the sun, under the sun, I don't know. But from the direction of the sun, this thing is going to appear in the Maseroth, and people are going to see it for a long time, maybe 40 days. And they're going to consider the things that are coming upon the earth, right? Men's hearts fail them for those things coming upon the earth. Again, I believe this event has happened multiple times. We can see it in the scriptures where there's something amazing is happening that's not normal, okay? At the crucifixion, the moon never, let me say that again, the moon never blocks out the sun and then has a blood moon in a 24-hour period. It happens within a 2-week period. You have a lunar eclipse and then a solar eclipse, just like we just had the lunar eclipse. You got a blood moon that was on the agricultural calendar on Passover, right? When is the eclipse? The eclipse was April 8th. The Jews in Israel are celebrating Passover at okay, so that's the new moon. When's the full moon? The 22nd, right? You see how that is, how they're spread out? They can never be in the same 24-hour period. Something else was happening at the crucifixion, you guys. It wasn't the moon that did that. Not for 3 hours. And certainly didn't cause the earthquake that happened. Something else did, right? You see where we're going with this? How this rabbit trail would develop, right? And I'm not someone that believes in Anunnaki and Stitchins. That's not where I'm coming from. This all came about because I kept seeing the rabbis talking about Nibiru, and I was like, what is going on here? Okay, the rabbis won't believe in wormwood. Now they're going to call it wormwood, you guys, because they don't read Revelation. They read Isaiah 24, but Isaiah 24, which has Nibiru in it, by the way, does not call it something. Okay, that's encoded there. We have to extract that, right? So I'm working this code. I'm seeing this correlation to this star coming from Jacob in the end times. By the way, that's close proximity. Kakav, Jacob, the star from Jacob is right next to Nibiru. That's very close proximity. All this is clustered really tight. All right. So seems like we're getting a prophecy plus a code on top of it from Balaam in this particular text, which is it's kind of abnormal. Balaam is not a Jewish, I mean, he's actually a pagan prophet, and he came under the anointing, as you saw there in the text, actually came under the anointing and was seeing a vision, and this is what he declared, right? So there's definitely a connection to something called Nibiru, or will be called Nibiru. Now, let's go back to the code that we were looking at last week, you guys, that we were working together, which was the Isaiah 53 code, right? The crucifixion, this is talking about a specific point in time, what happened to Yeshua there. And we can find all the information of the crucifixion there. Everything. All of the disciples, except for Judas, Caiaphas, Pilate, Joseph of Arimathea, just all the names that were associated in that story, you can find in this very narrow sliver of one chapter, Isaiah 53. So this is what we were working on last week. Let's just review a little bit on it. The original that Yaakov found was Yeshua is my great name from on high, right? So it's identifying who this is talking about, in my opinion, right? Capping his name right across the top of that, we have the word lamb that sits right there. Lamb. This is something you didn't see last week. I should have talked about that. Let me just kind of blow this up a little bit so you can see it a little better. You guys see what that is? You see Yod He Vav He vertical here. Then you have two letters on top. Those two letters, nar or near, is candle or light. Another way of saying light. You can say light with or, but near is another way of saying specifically a candle, the candle of Yahuwah, connecting with lamb, but also Yeshua is my great name from on high. We see Mary at his side, his mother Mary, and then we see the moniker, the Mashiach, that crosses his name. Also Passover in the white, Pesach, and in the orange is Netzlav. Remember, Netzlav is crucified, and you can see it because this is a cylinder. These letters are going to kind of look staggered a little bit, sort of like Tamim up here. Tamim means innocent, but you see how it makes like a diamond. It's because the number is such that it's going around the cylinder, and that's how it falls on this particular table. Tamim means innocent, right? Interesting how that's a kind of a banner at the top of this particular text here, you guys. I want to scroll it down just a little bit, or scroll it up, so we can see here that there's a blood moon in this. So there was definitely a blood moon that happened on Pesach. You see how close it is to Pesach here? A blood moon happening on Pesach, the very day that Yeshua was crucified. But it was not the moon. You cannot have a blood moon and a solar eclipse in 24 hours. What else blocked out the sun? You see that right here? You can spell Nibiru 3 ways. This is one of them right here. Nibiru appears in this very narrow strip of text, all in a small cluster, super small. Okay, and again, this is Isaiah 53. I can show you. Let's read some of that text so you see what I'm telling you the truth. Isaiah 53, and it's talking about a specific individual. Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of Yah revealed? For he shall grow up. It's not talking about a nation here. We're talking about a man. It's specifically a man. Okay? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, as a root out of the dry ground. You know what that, speaking of root, you know what the word for root or branch? Netzer. Netzer. You know what that, Yeshua comes from Nazareth? Netzer is the root word for that. So the place he was born connects him to the text, because it's describing he's a Netzer. Matter of fact, he was a Nazarene, right? A Nazarene. You guys know what a Nazarene is? They take a vow. I'm not going to get into it, but he was called the Netzer, the root of Jesse. All right.
Netzer is righteous. That's what it means.
Yeah, but we're talking about the root word for it. Multiple meanings for some of these Hebrew words, okay? the root out of dry ground. He hath no form or comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows. Again, telling us this is a man, and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our grief and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of Elohim, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, and he was bruised for our iniquities, and the chastisement of our peace was upon him. And with his stripes we are healed. All are like sheep, have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. And the Adonai hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, and yet he opened not his mouth. He was brought as a lamb to the slaughter, as a sheep before the shears is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. For he was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people he was stricken, and he had made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich in his death. That's specific. He took the grave of Joseph of Arimathea, of the rich, right, among the wicked, because he had done no violence, neither was there any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased Yah to bruise him, and it hath put him to grief, that thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, and he shall see his seed, and he shall prolong his days, right? So a very famous chapter about the suffering Messiah, you guys, and the rabbis don't want to talk about this chapter. You won't get them to show you any codes here because of what it reveals. You can't get around that. There's no way of faking that. You can't make it say something it doesn't. You understand? These anomalies are here. I didn't put them there. And so you will see quite frequently them talking about codes in the Torah, codes in the Torah. This is why. When Yeshua said the whole of the word testifies unto me, he means it. And so when we see all these messianic prophecies, and I think there's some 400 maybe, they all related to him. His name's all over it. Sometimes even saying Yeshua is my name, right? Or Yeshua is the gift, or the blood of Yeshua. Sometimes in some of the texts talking about the sacrifice, you see the blood of Yeshua is there, right? So the word confirming the word. So that was just kind of an example, you guys, of how you can go down like a rabbit trail, and you can use the codes, and I would recommend more than one table. You never just want to try to establish something with one table. You might want to look at it in different angles. I call it triangulating, and looking at it from different access terms that seem to be related or point to a relation. Does everybody understand that? So it's quite effective. I was able to do that and confirm that it wasn't the sun that was there. It wasn't the moon that blocked out the sun on that day. It's just not there. As a matter of fact, the word eclipse does not appear there, right? And we're talking about the solar eclipse. Blood moon is a lunar eclipse. We can denote that by saying blood moon. The word eclipse does not appear there. Nibiru does. Earthquakes do. It appears there. Blood moon appears, but no eclipse, no solar eclipse. So I came to this conclusion: this thing has got to be real. There's got to be something to it. There's no, it's not just accident. These rabbis are looking for this thing. And by the way, you know who else is looking for this thing? What other organization is looking for this thing? They got a telescope called Lucifer. And that's the Catholic Church. It's on Mount Graham in Arizona. And they're looking for something. What are they looking for? Wormwood is what they're looking for. They call it something different. The Jews are not going to call it that. They're going to call it Nibiru. Mark my words, when this thing happens, all of Judaism will be talking about this star system that the Zohar prophesied called Nibiru. And it's all in the text. You guys got any questions? That's about all I have for you today. Is Scott here? I was thinking Scott would show up, maybe share some codes. Any questions?
Yeah, Jonathan,
Yes, sir.
you mentioned there being 3 spellings for Nibiru.
Yep.
Are
Let me show you that.
those three spellings significant in is there meaning within each of the 3?
It's okay. Let me show you. I'm gonna pull up a translator and show you. I should have did this when I told you that. And sometimes you'll see this with Hebrew words, you guys. There's more than one way to spell it, or a completely different word altogether that's talking about the same thing. And those are called synonyms. One that I've talked about recently is the word Kodesh, which can mean month or moon, depending on the context that you use. So you'll see that quite often. Even with the word we have today, olam, depending on the context, is used differently. But for this word Nibiru that we were just talking about, let me show you the different ways you could spell that. It's all about the yod. Okay, the placement of the yod. First spelling. Let's spell it. This is called the complete spelling of Nibiru. And it has 2 yods in it. It's like this. Nun, yod, bet, yod, resh, vav. Nibiru. I think I've talked in one of the classes before about truncation in Hebrew, that sometimes you'll see in the text that a word is truncated, meaning it's shortened. So we can remove either, and I know it says Nibro, but that's not it. Again, Google doesn't do us any justice. You can remove either one of those yods and still have the same word, Nibiru. Okay, this is the one we saw in that text that just a moment ago. It's a full spelling. It's got both yods. When I ever look for that word, I usually look for all 3. I'll go from one to the other because it's 3 different ways you could spell it. Yods are not necessarily needed. They can be implied, right? So that's the lowdown on the Nibiru.
One other question about that. Where's that name come from? Is the Zohar? Is that the origination of that word is from the Zohar? Or is that
good question? Okay, good question. In the Ethiopic, what's called the Coptic Bible, okay, Ethiopian word is Nibiru, and there's a video I can bring this up next class for you guys, where this guy is looking at the Coptic Bible and he's looking at a place where it talks about the throne of El, the throne of God, and the word there is Nibiru, right? Okay, so it talks about in that particular place he's looking at about the throne of Yah coming down, Nibiru. Okay. The other time that I'd seen this word was with Stitchens, and that's where I kind of got confused with, well, what is this stuff doing? And I didn't get it. But then I started, being more acquainted with what the rabbis were looking for, and in particular in the Zohar. It doesn't use the word Nibiru. It's not named. Okay, it's sort of like Isaiah 24, where you see this event happening, but a name is not given to it, right? So this rabbi, more than 1,000 years ago, was talking about the star that would appear, this thing that would happen. It would be over 40 days, and they would see it getting closer and closer, and people would get fearful. But it's a sign for the end days, right? That's why we see the end of days running right through it. And incidentally, from the time of Balak to the time of Yeshua could be end days. There was actually the people in the time of Yeshua thought they were in the end, right? So we see a connection with that over and over again in the text. Like I said, Joshua's long day, there's a connection. Isaiah 24, another one. We can go to those chapters and see an access term, Nibiru, there, right? So and by the way, the word wormwood, Planet X, also appears together. So they're pretty consistent in the way they appear. Okay, I thought we just lost somebody. Anyway, so you see this correlation with what the rabbis are talking about, and then Numbers 24, right? Where it's like making this prophecy, then the Zohar seem to be talking about the same kind of thing. And so that's kind of how I got drawn in, pulled into it. But then also, you know, I could not reconcile what was happening at the crucifixion, you guys, with the 3-hour eclipse. Another thing, I can't believe a pastor, somebody with some intelligence over 2,000 years, has not pointed out the fact that this could not be the moon that did that. It's impossible. How? So imagine this. Imagine that the sun being blocked out longer than normal, and then that night you also see a blood moon. Now, anybody knows anything about astronomy and how this works, these things are spread out over 2 weeks. You have a blood moon and then a solar eclipse, not in 24 hours. And no pastor, nobody has had any knowledge and said, wait a minute, what is going on here, right? This is what was toiling in me. All these unanswered questions that, you know, you find from Christianity, nobody's ever explained, like the 3 days, 3 nights in the tomb thing, which is a whole nother teaching, you guys. You got to look at it on the biblical calendar and not a Gregorian calendar. Understand that. Yeshua was not crucified on a Friday. It was a Wednesday, if you want to be technical about it, on the lunar, solar, or agricultural calendar. Okay, Leanna, you got a question?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I've been wondering for years about, can you truncate years? Are they
Yes.
ever truncated?
Yes, you can use 4
Okay.
letters. Four
Thank you.
letters. And you guys, this is a really good resource. I got this. I've had 2 of these. Can you see that? It says 150-year calendar. It's a Hebrew calendar based on the sun and the moon. This is I think it's connected to the Hillel calendar, and it gives us a generalized understanding of the calendar. It's a little bit off because they have Saturday fixed but the years that are here are, you know, it's a good reference, especially if you don't know how to say the year in Hebrew, right? Which are turning numbers into letters, right? So all that information is given to you here. You can probably find this still on Amazon. It's called the Hebrew 150-year calendar, and I use that as a reference, especially when I'm looking up years and for birthdays, months and days, and years for people for personal name codes. That's how I find their birthday, is with what's in here. Yeah, so truncated is fine with years. You can see, like, for instance, we wanted to say this year, Tav Shin Pei Hey. 4 letters, Tav Shin Pei Hey. Or you could say in Tav Shin Pei, which would be Bet Tav Shin Pei Hey, or Hey Tav Shin Pei Hey, right? Michelle, you got a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was wondering, who's the author of that book that you just mentioned, the Hebrew 150-year calendar?
Let me look.
And does it coincide with the creation calendar version?
It's off a little bit because they have the days fixed for Saturday as the Shabbat, but all the days are listed. You'd have to convert it. Just sort of very similar we have to do on the Gregorian.
Right.
We have to do the same thing with how the Jews are doing. This is basically Hillel here, but it gives us, yeah. I don't see an author here. I think it's a publication, from Greenfield, Brooklyn, New York is the
Can you
publication.
show the cover again so I can? Okay, there, hold it right there. Okay, hang on, let me focus on your, oh snap, okay.
You got it?
Yeah, got it, thank you.
All right, you can find that on YouTube, just type it in. I think it's like, I forgot. This one says $10. The price tag is still in it, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No more. Okay, you guys, I promise you, I'm gonna work on getting that logistics issue with the download for you worked out this week. Somehow.
Oh, yay.
Somehow. The thought did occur to me, maybe getting some cheap thumb drives and putting it on each one and mailing them to you, but that might be a nightmare to do that. So hopefully I can get with Sitha this week and come up with a secure way that you guys can get that information, download it to your computer, and it's safe. We don't want anybody to be able to go in there and hack it and destroy it or change something, or, you know, so it's got to be password protected or something, right? That's one thing we have to be mindful of, is the enemy trying to come in and destroy or disrupt or sabotage or something like that. So I promise you guys we'll get that worked out as soon as possible, so we can start downloading. I'd like for us to get to the point where we can work through those resolution issues, and you guys can start working with the, you know, the functions on it, learning the functions on it. Anyway, if there's nothing else, you guys, I'm going to pray us out. We will see you back the same time next week, which is 5 o'clock West, 6 o'clock Mountain, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. All right. All right. But Father, we're just so thankful for each and every one of these students that you've brought us here. Father, I pray that you go with them this week, that you keep them safe, that you would inspire them, that you would, you know, reveal yourself in a mighty way to them in your word, that you would bring them back at the appointed time. We ask this in Yeshua's name. Amen. All right. Good class, you guys.
Thanks. Thank you, Jonathan. Bye.
Yes.
Thank you. Shalom. It was great again.
Shalom to you. You guys have a good week.
You too.
Shalom.
Shalom.